Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Henrik Hintze and I'm an equity analyst here at ABG. One of the companies I cover is SinterCast, and with me here today I have the CEO Steve Dawson here to answer some questions for us. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
All right, so to start us off, could you maybe give us a bit of an overview of the current state of engine equivalent production and how you aim to get to 5 million by 2026?
Yeah, let me start by going backwards a little bit to set the baseline. So in the last half of 2023 and the first half of 2024, we averaged 4 million engine equivalents. So that was a very stable baseline. Coming out of the summer shutdowns in 2024, the market slowed down a little bit, and that hit us for about 0.3 million. In September, we had one of our larger programs come to its end of life, and that hit us for about 0.5 million. And so we finished 2024 with a run rate of around 3.2. So your question is, how do we get from 3.2 today to 5 million before the end of 2026? In January, we announced the start of production with First Automobile Works in China, FAW. In February, we announced the start of production with MAN in Germany. So together, those two programs come almost to 1 million. So that builds us back into the early 4 millions, let's say 4.1-ish. We expect also a general recovery in the market. If that cost us 0.3 in the beginning, we should get another 0.3 through the recovery. That gets us to around 4.4. And we had expected a pre-buy effect in the second half of 25 and through 26. That's now in question. We'll come to that later. And we also have some new programs that are scheduled for start of production that we haven't announced yet. So all of those things together get us well above 4.5. When we speak of 5 million, that's reaching the 5 million engine equivalent milestone. We always have seasonal effect where some months are high. September, October are normally good. March, April, May, June are normally good. So I do still think that we make the 5 million engine equivalent milestone before the end of 2025.
Yeah. All right, very good. So as you sort of alluded to, installations in 2024 were really strong, almost 50% above the average level. And you've commented that you expect an even stronger year in 2025. Could you comment a bit on the installations you made in 24 and what you have in the pipeline for 25?
Yeah, as you say, 2024, we were 11.4 million. Our historical average is around 8 million. And we have 4 different opportunities for installation revenue. One is spare parts. The other is upgrades and capacity expansion. And then we have our full CGI systems and our tracking systems. And last year we had a good contribution from all 4 of them. The biggest contribution was actually capacity upgrades and production expansion. So I think that's a really good indication that our existing customers are gearing up for higher volume. And that matches with what we said about the future growth. Coming to this year, last year we said that between June and October we had order intake of 9 million Swedish crowns. We got a lot of that in 2024, but some of it is carryover to this year. So that gives us a good start to 2025. The pipeline, or what I call our installation list, there's some that you get, there's some that fall out, and there's always new ones that come in. It's a really dynamic list. At the moment, it's more than 20 million crowns. Yeah, so a lot of those will come through. I think that we have a really good pipeline for installations in 25 and again in 26, and every opportunity to match or beat 11.4 million this year. And as ever, you need one big one to carry you, and then you can cobble it together with the little ones. And we also, you have to get commitments in the first half of the year so that you can install before the end of the year. But I think it's all shaping up well. We've got to crack on and get some commitments across the line before midsummer.
All right, so could you kind of talk us through the process of signing a new production program and what kind of visibility you have in these processes?
A new engine program takes about 4 years from when the OEM says we're going to make a new engine until they start the production. So you have this 4-year development timeline. In the first year, it's mostly in-house design. Sometimes the OEMs contact us at that period to get input about material properties. Toward the end of the first year, they'll go out and make prototypes so they can procure and assemble and test the first engine. Sometimes we're involved in the prototype phase. But by the time you get to year 2, the OEMs go out with what we call RFQ, so request for quotes. And there they go out to the supply community and ask for quotes on fuel injection equipment and pistons and base engine like us, cylinder block and head and emissions equipment and everything. And so the programs are really well known throughout the supply community. At that point, they tell you when is the start of production date. And they also ask for quotes for, X number in year 1 and Y number in year 2, and usually a 5-year layout of the production ramp. So I think that at least 2 years before production, you have really good visibility on what's coming for start of production in at least the first 3 to 5 years. So the positive side of that is that we really know well what's coming in 25, 26, 27, even into 28. And the other part of it is that it's highly unlikely to be surprised by anything else popping up in 25 or 26. Yeah? But we have really good visibility. The industry has really good visibility.
All right. So looking at the near term here now, there's recently been a lot of discussion regarding the weakness of the both European and American automotive market. Could you sort of give us your view on the current state of the market and how it affects SinterCast?
Yeah, I would say indeed Europe is weak, America less. Let's look at cars in the beginning. We're less than 1% car, but it's a really good barometer of the industry. So in Europe, they were running at around 15 million cars per year before COVID. And indeed, they had 6 consecutive years of growth leading up to COVID. Since then, it's been 9 or 10 million. Last year was 10.6 million. It doesn't look like Europe will come back. That seems to be the new normal for Europe. In America, last year was 15.9 million. It was up 3.5%. And I can remember in the old days, people used to say that when we make 16 million cars, everybody's happy, everybody makes money. So we're in a really healthy level in America, and that's where we have the F-150 and the Super Duty, a lot of our passenger vehicle volume. Commercial vehicles, Europe was down 10% last year. The US was up 5% last year. Currently, it looks like both will be down in the first half of this year, maybe stable and flat for the second half of this year. But again, we expect some recovery toward the end of 25 and into 26. So I think reasonably healthy volumes with upside.
All right. And another big topic at the moment is the tariff situation in the US. Could you maybe tell us how that affects you?
Let's discuss direct and indirect effects. Directly, it doesn't affect us at all. So if you go back to the old days, now I'm into 1980s and 1990s, every OEM in America had its own foundry. And over the last 25, 30 years, they have all closed them. They didn't sell them, they simply closed them. So today there are no cast iron cylinder block and head foundries left inside the United States. So everything has to come in anyway. Most of it comes from Mexico or Brazil, some of it from Europe, not much of it from Asia at this stage. We have 100% of the foundries in Mexico and Brazil. So we're really well positioned. If they're going to bring engines into the US or engine castings into the US, it will be with us. So I don't see any direct impact at all. Indirectly, of course, it can affect the economy. Vehicle sales can go down. And if that's the case, everyone goes down with it, including us.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. All right, so we've discussed volume now quite a bit. What can you tell us about the pricing situation at the moment?
So we have long-term pricing agreements. That's normal in our industry, foundry and automotive. Our 2 biggest customers are due for review. So one of them at the end of 25, the other at the end of 26. So I do expect price reviews and price increases in 25 and 26. So earlier we talked about volume increase, and we'll compound that as well with price increases. At the rest of our customers, we did have some price reviews last year. primarily on the consumables, and we did well there, 5 to 10% increases on consumables. So that helped. But the big change will be end of 25 and end of 26.
All right. Yeah, so you sort of mentioned that at the beginning here, but emissions legislations have been mentioned as a demand driver for you. What are you seeing on this front at the moment?
Still good for us, still helpful for us. How do you make an engine cleaner, right? You make an engine cleaner by increasing the pressure and increasing the temperature. When you increase the pressure and temperature, you have a more complete combustion of the fuel. It means you have more power, and you also have better fuel economy. And at the same time, you put more load on the engine. And as that engine load has increased, people have progressively gone to stronger materials, which was compacted graphite iron, which was us. So from 2004, the pressure inside of an engine was something like 210 bar. Today, it's more like 250. We know that by the end of 29, it will be something like 270 bar. And so one by one, they move to CGI. Today, something like half of the market for new engines uses CGI. We know that in 2029, because of the good visibility that we discussed earlier, that will be more like 80%. And of course, that's the basis of our confidence in this continued growth from where we are today, 3.2 million-ish, to 5 million, to 6 million, and further to 7 million.
All right. And if we look at the even longer term, could you give us an update on your thoughts on SinterCast's opportunities within, renewable fuels like hydrogen in the longer term?
Again, we'll divide between Europe and America. In Europe, the emissions legislations for trucks were minus 45% CO2 in 2030, minus 65 in 2035, and minus 90% in 2040. And when they established those rules, exactly 1 year ago, because it was March of 2024, they weren't allowed to use liquid fuels, right? So the European idea was that it should all be done by electrification or perhaps from hydrogen. Progressively, and we see it everywhere in the media, it's starting to be a realization that that's not practical, right? The vehicles aren't ready, the infrastructure isn't ready, the cost isn't ready, and nothing is fast and easy in this industry. So Europe said that they would vote on the ability to use net zero fuels in 2027. In the meantime, last July, the Commission and the Parliament changed considerably. The previous European Parliament was very ideological, and basically their stance was if there's a C in the formula, you can't use it. That will change. It is certain that in 27, maybe it will be moved forward to 26, that will change, and there will be an exemption from the rule for vehicles that run on recycled or net zero fuels. So I'm totally confident in that. We see that the Parliament is moving in that direction. We see that the refiners are moving in that direction. And also there's a lot of new technologies that are being made available, this onboard diagnostics, where you have a sensor in the fuel tank. And so they can see what type of fuel you're using, and that will be registered, and you can document the miles that are driven on clean fuels. So that will come. It's a door-opening thing for SinterCast. If you look long-term, there's discussion about battery trucks, fuel cell trucks, and engine trucks with clean fuels. And I'm sure now that engines with clean fuels becomes the preferred path, and it will be a mix. The solution will be a mix. But the way that the discussion is evolving is that engines become preferred and become the biggest part of that mix. And that's something for the long term, well beyond 2040.
All right. So that's given us a good picture of the long-term growth runway for the company. What can you tell us about the costs needed to support this growth?
Well, we're not a manufacturer, so the bulk of our cost is personnel. So we can equally talk about headcount. Today we're just 26. We have 2 retirements coming, one of which is me. The other is a senior technical engineer. He'll leave at the end of 25. And the thing is that the replacement for both of us is already in-house and has been for over a year. So we're kind of carrying double costs. So what will happen at the beginning of 26 is it will go from 26 people to 25. And at the AGM in May of 26, it will go from 25 to 24. So the headcount will go down, the cost will go down. I don't see this perhaps this year is peak cost for SinterCast, and I don't see us reaching it again before 2028. So yeah, volume goes up, price goes up, cost goes down.
That sounds like a good place
It's a good
to be in.
combination. Yeah.
All right. Could you just remind us of your financial targets and kind of tie everything we've discussed back into what gives you confidence in these?
Okay, so financial targets. Number 1 was double-digit growth through 2030. Historically, we've always been around 10% in a 10-year perspective, closer to 15% in a 15-year perspective. With the dip to 3.2 at the end of last year, our 10-year CAGR is 7.9 currently. But we have strong growth ahead. We'll keep it up around 10% through 2030. Next one was gross margin above 70. And of course, as we grow the revenue and the installation contribution, which is really where we have our cost of goods sold, stays fairly stable around 10 million, whatever, the gross margin will grow. Operating margin, last year 31.8%. The year before, I think it was 31.3%. We're going to get that above 40%. Again, revenue increases, cost decreases. We'll get there. That one is clear. I don't think that we stuck our chin out too far when we put 40% as a target. Next one was CO2. It was to reach 100 million tons of CO2 abatement before 2028. We're currently at 69 million. We run at about 10 million tons saved per year. So again, we'll get there. Whether it's end of 27 or early 28, that one is equally clear. And the last one was 25 years of continuous increase in the ordinary dividend. So we've had 14. Our dividend proposal to the AGM is another increase, so that gets us to 15. I'm sure it will be approved by the shareholders at the AGM. And then this outlook, to 2030, with growing volume and growing revenue and no increase in the cost, we'll be in a position to continue that. We'll get from 15 to 20 years. And I'm more confident in it, because the market is shaping up in favor of us with this acceptance of clean fuels. And just to go back to the emissions just for a moment, we talked about Europe and the increase in pressure. In the US now, just in the last days, there seems to be a push on EPA 27. EPA 27 wasn't about CO2. There was no real requirement for CO2 reduction on trucks until 28, 29. That was all about NOx, nitrogen oxides. And that was the Biden administration trying to put forward favorable legislation for electric vehicles. And what it means now when the Trump administration pushes that or cancels that is that the framework for electric vehicles becomes much more difficult. So maybe we don't get the pre-buy effect that we were expecting in 25, 26, but it makes our runway much longer. So yeah, I think that post-2030 with clean fuels in Europe, and they're already approved in America, and with the push on the electrification, I think we look really good.
All right, and then finally, maybe, as you mentioned, you're currently kind of mentoring your successor to be Anios before he takes over the company. Could you remind us of the timeline of your retirement and how the succession is going?
Succession is going really well. Timeline is that he joined in January of 24, so he's 14 months in. Really good start, really good guy. He's a workhorse. Last year it was primarily inside the company, learning the technology, learning the governments, learning the customers. He spent 1 month with our largest customer in Brazil as a resident. Now this week he's in Mexico with our large customer in Mexico, serving as a resident there. He's been there for 2 weeks. So he's learning our company, he's learning our customers. What we'll focus on in the second half of this year is going out to the OEMs. I'll introduce him around to all of the OEMs. And then by the time we get to January of 26, he will step into the lead. I'll be there supporting and mentoring, and transition ultimately at the AGM in May of 26. But perfectly on schedule and perfectly confident.
Very good. Thank you very much for that, Steve. That's all we have time for today. And thank you all for listening.
Okay. Thank you.